Today's episode of the On the Water podcast is brought to you by Old Town Canoe and Kayaks. Old Town has been making the finest canoes and kayaks for over 120 years right on the banks of the Penobscot River in Maine. Their line of sportsman fishing kayaks has options for every angler, fresh and salt, inshore and offshore, and they come in paddle, pedal, and power versions. I'm a huge fan of saltwater kayak fishing, and I absolutely love my Old Town Sportsman Big Water 132 pedal kayak. It's big enough to take offshore and out into open water, but it's nimble enough for fishing inshore in the backwaters. Plus, it's super stable. I am totally comfortable standing up in my kayak, fly fishing for striped bass. I also use it to bottom fish for black sea bass and tautog. In the fall, I take it out on the water almost every day to chase false albacore. Absolutely my favorite fish to chase from the kayak. So if you're looking to get into kayak fishing, or if you're maybe already a kayak fishing addict and you're just looking to upgrade, I highly recommend checking out the Old Town Sportsman line of kayaks. You can take a look online at oldtowncanoe.com/onthewater. Once again, that's oldtowncanoe.com/onthewater. Check them out. Welcome to another episode of the On the Water podcast. I'm Kevin Blinkoff, and I've got Jimmy Fee here with me today. And on this week's episode of the podcast, we've got Captain BJ Silvia of Flipping Out Charters of Rhode Island. BJ is a Tog, Fluke, and striper specialist. We filmed a bunch of episodes with him, and on the episode today, you're going to see Chris Megan and Jimmy Fee talking with BJ about really all matters of fishing, but kind of a focus on bottom fishing. Is that right?
So, absolutely. We're going to talk a lot about tog fishing, a little bit about striper fishing, and using your electronics to get better at both of those styles of fishing. BJ is one of those guys who you fish with, and you can tell he's having the most fun on the boat. And those are the captains I love fishing with, where he takes it seriously. He wants to find fish. He wants to catch fish more than the next guy, but he's still having fun. At one point he said in the episode, he goes, we're going to laugh. He goes, I can't control the conditions. I can't control what the fish do, but I can control how much fun you're having on the boat. And those are the exact type of guys who you want to fish with.
Definitely. So it's a good podcast. Definitely stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, Jimmy, we just got off of winter show season. So it's kind of a nice time of year where we're done with the shows and we're moving on now to spring fishing. But it was a lot of fun to get out there, work the shows, talk with people who read On the Water magazine and watch our videos. And also for the first time at the shows, we got to hear from people who listen to the podcast. And just want to say thanks to everybody who gave us feedback. We had a lot of feedback, mostly positive, and always good to talk to folks and talk fishing.
Yeah, that's the best part about these winter shows is they really do break up the off season. And probably my favorite part about them is being able to see the tackle firsthand that I'm looking to buy for that coming season. Mm-hmm. You have a lot of the manufacturers, the major manufacturers will be at these shows. The two main ones we went to this year were the Rhode Island Saltwater Anglers Association Saltwater Show and the Saltwater Fishing Show in Edison, New Jersey. And those had Shimano fishing there, Penn fishing, Daiwa. So all the major rod and reel brands are there. A lot of lure manufacturers, both local guys and some of the bigger ones. So it's a chance to really see what's new in fishing. And, it can be a little bit dangerous for your wallet if you don't go in there with a
Yeah, definitely set a budget. It's that time of year when everybody's antsy to get out and start fishing and buy some fishing gear. Based on the crowds there, a lot of people went this year, but if you've never been to one of these shows, I would definitely check it out next season. Quick shout out to the Rhode Island Saltwater Anglers Association. Their volunteers put on that show. It's a lot of work for them. A lot of people come through the door, a lot of coordination. They do a great job with that show. And then, like you said, if you're down in New Jersey, Edison, New Jersey, the Saltwater Show, another great one as well. And then, of course, there's also, if you're looking for boats, there's boat shows. There's a lot of options in the wintertime.
If you're looking for those really hard to get striper plugs, there's the fishing flea markets and, a couple of the fishing clubs put on these shows where you have these really hard to get custom plugs that are on sale by the lure builders themselves. Those are the ones where you might end up, if you want to get that lure, you'll line up in front. Some guys start at 2, 3 in the morning for a chance to get that lure. I've done it. I haven't done it lately, though, but I think I have enough plugs. But I do get a little bit of fear of missing out when I don't make it to these shows.
But that season's wrapping up, and I would say, striper season is starting to get going. And we've heard great reports from down south in the Chesapeake. New Jersey striper season is really starting to heat up pretty quickly. Did you get to do any fishing while you were down in New Jersey at that show?
I did do some fishing. It was so when I was leaving Edison, well, I was literally driving back over the George Washington Bridge. I think I'd just gotten into New York and got a text message that I had my co-pilot, Matt Hefner, our assistant editor, read for me. And it was a picture of birds, over bait, and fish coming into the Raritan Bay. So we seem to just miss it. Seems like it broke wide open just as the Edison Saltwater Show was coming to a close. And it's been pretty good since. The fishing I did while I was down there were some guys catching fish on worms and shads. It seemed to be mainly a daytime bite, which didn't quite work out with the show schedule. So when the show closed on Saturday, I tried to get out there and get some fishing in before it got dark because it had been kind of a daytime bite. And that you tend to see that in the early spring. The late afternoons when the sun's had a chance to warm the backwaters, temperature ticks up a couple degrees and those resident fish get active. So that's often the best time to go catch fish in the early spring. We got down there and we saw the police had kind of cordoned off a certain area. And I walked down there and they said, please, if you don't mind, we've got something going on here. Could you go fish somewhere else? I came to learn, I saw a kind of a duffel bag off in the distance that I heard was filled with bricks and something else. And
so this was Matt Hefner, our assistant editor. This was his first time fishing in New Jersey, and this is what you introduced him to?
Well, yeah. I don't think anybody's ever heard that in a Bruce Springsteen song before. Maybe in some of his deeper tracks. I love fishing in New Jersey. There's a lot of beautiful places. That just happened to be not the beautiful place that I think I'll ever return to again. There's plenty of striper spots throughout the Garden State, and I may leave that one alone from now on.
And on that note, I think we're going to kick it off and get the podcast started with Chris Meaghan, Jimmy Fee, and our guest this week, Captain BJ Sylvia.
Today's guest, you might have seen him on several episodes of On the Waters Angling Adventures. Well, not just Chris. Chris has been on almost all of them. But Captain BJ Silvia, good friend of ours, tremendous fisherman for striped bass, fluke, tog, ice fisherman. And BJ, thanks for coming up, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So this is your off season right now, but this for you it's like your season. This is when you do your fishing right now in the winter.
Yeah, I just had a guy ask me the other day at the store, are you excited to get back to it? I'm like, no, don't rush me back. I mean, I need a couple months here to get it all back together. So, and that's what the ice fishing does, it kind of gets me back to level and then start the season off again. And
it's
go
nice
crazy.
to have that slower season like that. Jimmy and I have gone up and joined you guys on a couple of the shoots up there with Robbie Taylor and the crew. It's just nice. It's ice fishing is so different from fishing out there when you're getting after it, especially if you find a great spot. Ice fishing is almost like a tailgate out on the water.
It's a blast.
Out on the hard water, I should say. But it's such a great time getting out and seeing friends that you really get a chance to talk to as you're waiting for a flag to go up.
And it's an adventure. It's like getting to the spot. You'll just see Robbie will be like, hey, let's look at that spot out there. Let's get to that. I'm like, oh, Robbie, that's across the lake. That's probably, but it always turns into an adventure. So I was I felt like years ago I was the young guy, and the old timers always said I kept them young. Now that's what kind of Robbie does to me a little bit. He's like, let's go over here. And I'm like, all right.
Yeah, it's a long way.
Let's go.
Although you guys all have quads and such, so it makes it a little easier. God knows I've run on the back of one of those sleds and throw it across the ice.
It is next level ice fishing what you guys do. You have the quads. You have a side by side that you take out on the ice.
Yeah. New snowmobiles. We all have new snowmobiles this year, and we all have new fish finders with the Mega Live this year. So it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be
nowhere for the Lakers to hide.
Yeah, Robbie.
Quick question on that with Robbie, because like Robbie will say, I want to go here, but how much does your electronics actually dictate where you're going to fish? Because you may get to where Robbie wants to fish, and there's just nothing there.
So, I don't know if this is supposed to be an ice fishing podcast, but
no, it's not. And that's one thing about on the water. We're all over the map.
But we can get into it a little bit. It's the electronics from every company. It's changed ice fishing. The rods. I mean, Robbie caught that little tiny. I mean, that big lake on that little tiny rod last year. I went and took all my big rods, put them away, and I went and got little tiny light stuff just to have more fun. But it's totally changed. Years ago, ice fishing was a guessing game. You kind of remembered kind of close to where the weed beds were, where you put your tip ups. Now there's no guessing. You go right back to your spots for year after year. So.
You know what? I want to segue that. This is Jimmy's actually the host, but I don't get to do many of these. And I'm going to segue that because it's a great segue. Electronics. Electronics has changed the way we all fish, and how electronics has changed how we fish for striped bass, how we fish for tautog, how we fish for everything. And I always say, Jeff Kolozinski's a good friend of both of ours, brand manager over at Hummingbird Minn Kota. And one of the things that I mentioned to Jeff, and this is something actually I learned with you as well, is that with great power comes great responsibility. Segueing from the ice fishing over to the striped bass, to the tautog and such, you've always done a great job with conservation.
Yep.
And with great power comes great responsibility. And how has the electronics changed our fishing? And with that great power, how we need to be more responsible as anglers, because you can find that school, you can dial in on them, you can get down on top of these fish and within a foot either way. I fished with BJ. You can drop it in the roof of a boat that sunk 20 years ago through a 1 foot hole and pull out a big tautog. How has that electronics changed, and how do you see it going towards the future?
Well, when I first started with Hummingbird, Bill Carson would come up and fish with me, and he would try to get me to use side scan. And I would sit there and I'd go, I was so used to my regular 2D sonar. And he's like, dude, you can look 100 feet each side, but you want to look at a 10-foot scope. And this is up in the bay and the mud flats where these fish are going, where they can go wherever they want. There's no structure holding them. They just go with the bait. And it took me a couple years to finally go, all right, Bill, you were right. Just why? And now I sit there and go, why did I ever fight side scan? I mean, it's the best thing for trying to get bait, seeing stripers. It's crazy. Now you got the just your down image and your 2D. Just sometimes your difference between your 2D and your down image, and you'll see things that you never. For one thing, squid fishing. Sometimes the squid will pick up on one and not the other, so it's squid. So once you start using all your stuff to your advantage, once you realize, all right, there's a lot of stuff I can do here, then it changes everything. But a lot of guys, because I work a lot of the shows, they're afraid to dive into it, and I understand because I was too. But once you dive into it, and once you use the stuff and use it right, it's just deadly. And there is, I'm on the fish every day. I know where these fish are. So it does. You have to be, you have to let a lot of fish go. You have to make sure the stocks stay healthy. And I think with social media and all that, guys are doing a good job of that. So I don't know if that answered any of the questions. But
Oh, no, it did. I want to get back to that for sure. But first, I just want to get a little bit more of your background. How long, how old is Flipping Out Charters?
This will be 15 years this year. The only reason I know that is I got to renew my captain's license in a couple months. So it's every 5 years. So I'm coming up on, this will be my 15th year.
So over those 15 years, how have you seen things change? Not necessarily in terms of the fishery, but angler preference. I mean, when you first started out, it had to be all striped bass, and I would guess fluke were probably your two most popular species.
Yeah, well, just to go way, way back, when I first started charter fishing, I was probably 18 to 20 years old, and I worked on boats. They were bluefish charters. We did bluefish charters in Newport. They didn't even try for striped bass. If we got a striper, it was by accident. They would go out to Washington Ledge, chunk it up, and it was bluefish. Every now and then you get a big shark, and
it's incredible how the times have changed.
It is, so it's crazy. Now I think we see, back in those days, I think there was a lot more bluefish. Now I was only a deckhand, so I don't know what the captain was seeing and what, and that's the way he liked to fish. So, but yeah, I'm not sure. Way back in those days, but I think there was a lot of bluefish then. Now I think there's a lot of bass now. So.
Oh, for sure, man. And then it seems like now, I always thought of you as a big striper guy back when I first met you and first knew you. Now it's like, I think of Rhode Island tog fishing. I think of you. I think of Robbie Taylor. Like you two guys for being the Rhode Island tog guys.
So I always fished tog when I was with my grandfather. So that was his favorite thing to do. I was a kid. I couldn't catch them. I take out kids 9, 10, 14-year-olds now at night. I look over, and every time I turn around, they're catching these fish. And I'm mad because I'm like, I couldn't do that when I was their age. But a lot of the rods and reels on the line, back in those days, we had Peterson rods with mono line, and, I wasn't feeling any of the bites. Yeah. So, I had a guy on my charter a couple years ago, and he brought this rod out. He was so proud of it. I didn't realize how proud of the rod he was. And I said, oh, National Grid called. They want their telephone pole back. And all his friends started laughing. I'm like, uh-oh, what? And they're like, that's his favorite. That was his favorite rod.
Passed down from his grandfather who died.
Yeah. Well, he got a 15-pounder. He got a 15-pounder on that rod years ago. So he was, but I was like, try this rod. He's like, oh, wow. I said, how much is this rod? I was like, about 300. He goes, oh, geez, and he puts it back down. And I'm like, so that's changed too. Everything's changed in that part. But
yeah, just the popularity of the tog fishing, I think, with that change in the gear, it being more fun, seems to have really. I mean, I bet you got to be pretty close to booked out for next fall, right?
Already booked.
Yeah, that's incredible. So if somebody wants to get a tog trip with you, when do they need to call you?
I can't even take guys right now. It's the same
2
guys.
years ago.
Yeah. I'm fortunate, and and these guys make me look good because all I got to do is put them anywhere near the fish. And these guys, Garrett, you guys had on here, and Big Ray. I got all these guys from New York that are just incredible fishermen. So it makes my day sweet just because I just sit there and make fun of them. We just laugh all day.
The ebb and flow of the season for the tog, though, it's got to extend the season for you, right?
Oh, absolutely. Even now, we're catching them in August. I mean, it's something that we don't really want to do. I don't want to fish for them until I have to because it's a long journey from pretty much October 1st to December 1st for me. And they were still catching them up till a couple of weeks ago out off block, which I'd never even heard of that years ago.
So, BJ, map out your season, what that looks like from when you start, beginning of the year, what you're targeting, where you go to, how those changes. Obviously, you're into the stripers right now. As you mentioned, bluefish have pushed off a little bit right now. But map out what your season looks like.
So I start off in the end of April. If we have a mild winter like this one, usually I can get those fish to hit the last week of April. You can catch them before that, but I can't get any numbers. And I can't get guys to come from New York, New Jersey to catch one or two fish. So usually by the last week of April, I can get numbers. And usually that first week of May, second week of May, really good black fishing. It's 3 fish a person. My guys never take females. I hear a lot of people talk about how they would like to shut it down in the spring. I'd never want to see that. Make it an 18-inch fish. I don't care. But let us fish for them. Just let us fish for them. I don't
maintain the access to the fishery.
Even care. We let them go. I don't care. But it's, and I can see where there are guys taking females. They're easy to see that time of year. Their bellies are. Nobody's telling you have to take that fish. Or, and another thing, if it's an 18-inch fish. If they moved it up to a 17 and 18, by the time, if you even took an 18-inch pregnant fish in the springtime, that fish spawned for years and years and years. So you can't feel too bad about doing it. I'm sure the eggs are healthier in bigger fish, but I just don't ever want to see them close anything down anymore. Just make it catch and release or make it or whatever, but let us fish for them.
Yeah. So after your spring tog season ends, so you said about mid-May, it's still really good. Do you switch over to bass?
I do. I switch over to bass, but the problem is now it's like I chase these. So you got to chase these fish in the Newport. You can start off, catch them out by Block Island end of April, and those fish every week will move further and further up, and then they come right into Newport, and then they come right up the bay, and then they go way up, or they go in the shallow places and spawn.
This is the tog.
The tog. Yep. So you can keep going, but it gets harder and harder and harder. When they come in the springtime, they're all gathered up. So you can find them like off Castle Hill, they're gathered. You can have epic days. Then I know how to track them right up into the bay. So and there's a lot of spots, a lot of hiding spots for them. And I've been doing this for, we're saying 15 years this year. I found more spots this year than I've ever found in my life. And it's
how much of that comes back to the electronics we talked about?
All electronics.
Yeah.
Nope.
And so you move on to the striped bass. Give me the striped bass season for you.
So striped bass probably the third week of May, third week of May, you'll start to get them. Last year I'm pulling out of my marina, and they're just schools of
flipping right outside.
Massive fish, and they're little small fish on top, and there's turns everywhere. And I look out and I see all these boats out there casting little top waters into these fish. And I look down at the fish finder 40 feet away. I look at the bottom. I'm like, those aren't small fish. Drop flutter spoons down, boom, and just start. And they were massive fish. It was early in the year. all big fish, all 30-plus pound fish, just right outside my marina, sitting under the schools. So once again, electronics.
Did we get that call? Did we get that call?
Happened twice to me, right outside. Everybody's like, "You're the best captain." I'm like, "This is luck." I mean, they're right outside the marina. We could almost cast these things on the dock, but right there, and those are big fish. I mean, there was some big fish that show up early that. I don't know where these fish in the springtime in the May, where these fish are coming from, what they're doing, I have no clue. But the May fishery's incredible, and it's big fish. And back when we used to be able to keep them, a lot of those fish never spawned. So they had all the eggs in them.
That makes sense. So what were we down with Robbie? We filmed with Robbie last year.
That was like June 4th.
Well, I was going to say early June then. Yeah.
But yeah, they
usually that's the time of year, even at June, right around that time we could almost start making the switch to out front, and there's fish out there too. So there'll be. Yeah. You can do both.
Where you're situated is I mean, you have kind of the best of both worlds. You've got a great bay fishery, and then you have a tremendous ocean fishery and access to Block Island.
Right.
But having that, being at the mouth of Narragansett Bay there, I mean, there's just so much so much bait in there. It's like a bait factory.
Right.
The tog move in there to spawn. I think that's what makes that area such a rich tog habitat.
The most bait I've ever seen in my life the last couple of years.
And
most
somewhere
bait.
between that, you have to wedge in Fluke. When does Fluke come in? I know the Fluke to your puke is a big tournament for you guys.
The Fluke for me, talk about luck. I mean, 2 years ago we got a 15. I think I fluked twice that year. And last year we got a 13.5. I might have fluked.
So you're not really targeting the Fluke that way?
No, it's
just
more
when you
like
pick
they're
a
mixed.
day or two?
No, sometimes, Robbie, when we do 2 or 3 boat charters, we run out to a couple spots, and we're more sea bass and fluke in combo, and they're mixed right together. They're right in there. The big fluke we got this year, 13.5, and we were trying to catch sea bass. So
now, fluke used to be a bigger part of your season, though, right? I mean, you make the flipping out fluke rigs are a very popular rig down there.
I commercial fished them years ago. Well, that's when I used to fish them a lot. Believe it or not, fluking was one of those things I thought, oh, this is a great thing to bring tourists to do and put the rods in the water and just drift. And then the good fluke fishermen, I can take tourists to a spot and be like, there's nothing there. I can take good fishermen that same spot and actually kill it. So you do have to be a very good fluke and blackfish. You got to be top notch, and to get numbers and stuff, anybody can catch a big fish or a couple fish here and there. Sometimes you can just Rodney the rod holder, just dragging baits. But a really good fluke fisherman. I mean, Newport has some great fishing. Except
because the last time I fished with him for fluke, he's like, "There's nothing here, Chris. We're moving on." I think that was me there. I think I was the
He's like, just leave it in the rod holder.
Just leave it in the rod holder.
It is. It's hard. You got to be good. And I don't know. And we had a couple weeks last year where the fluking were off the hook, so it was really good. But I had other things booked. But it's weird. It's something. I've been doing this long enough where I can tell you whatever happened this year is not going to happen next year.
Yeah,
that's the only thing I've ever learned in fishing is you can go back to all the same spots you did last year, and even up in the bay where you guys were with Robbins, that'll all change this year. They'll be somewhere, but they probably won't be right there. So
now those 2 big fluke you mentioned, I know the 15-pounder was caught on a flipping out fluke rig.
Yep.
Was the 13.5 too?
No, it was on a poison tail. Dominic's backwater poison tail. Yep.
Those
with
are
6-inch, 5-inch or 6-inch grub.
Okay. Yeah, the big bait for them. And that's the other thing about your fluke rigs. It's kind of a 3-way rig.
Yep.
You've got a squid, and do you have a spinner on there too?
Yep.
And just a kind of a standard 3-way, put a big
How
strip
long ago
on
did you
there.
start making those? I'm just curious.
I think it was about 16 years, 16, 17 years.
I think it was the Reese's show, one of the first Reese's shows that you ended up giving me some of those. I still have some.
That was long,
Yeah.
And the so the striper season will take you right through tog season, pretty much.
Yeah.
Right through August.
Yeah, right through. So stripe was probably last 2 years, second, third week of September. Really good striper fishing. All that first week, second week, but they're going by. So they're going by quick. So once last week of September, I got some blackfish trips booked. So
how about the funny fish? Do you find yourself sometimes there's so many in there between the bonito or the albies or whatever might show up that year that you just drop everything and you have to chase them?
So this year, I always keep a rod rigged up, 1 or 2, and just let the guys blackfishing. The funny thing is the blackfish guys, they do not want to chase anything else, but they will throw it an albie. Some of the guys, so they and
comes by,
usually
floats it up.
they come to us. So it's instead of chasing them. But I didn't see a lot this year. I only caught a couple. But every year's different. I didn't hardly saw any bonita. I don't know if they just went by us or what, but
It wasn't a great bonito year here. Like we have them, maybe 5 years ago now. They all came up into Buzzards Bay. Great fishing on this side. Usually you have them on the backside of the vineyard, but even this year that was kind of sparse. So.
yeah, they in the late fall they were gathered up off of like Middletown, and there was under those schools, a lot of those schools too, a lot of squetique now that people don't realize are there. So when same thing, when you're looking at your fish finder, you're chasing bluefish and stripers on the surface. You look down, you're like seeing all those big blips on the bottom, because they had massive swim bladders, so they really pick up. There's some nice. Sometimes you just take the epoxies and just start vertical jigging them. Yeah,
Really?
Yeah, there's some nice critique. Yeah, but you never can plan it though. It's something they just pop up, and if you're there, you're there.
I know we're going to circle back around, Jimmy, to the blackfish, but one of the things that and you were one of the guys that I fished with that I really started. I mean, we were kind of doing it up this way, but you're one of the leaders in it. I say the conservation of the Tautog. Whenever we film together, we probably film 4 times together. I think we've done a couple of Tautog shoots, letting go the females, and then that range of what you're keeping and what you're not keeping as far as too small, too big, whatever that is. Talk a little bit more about that, because I think it's so important. You touched on it briefly about letting go the females. A little bit more about how you think that fishery is right now, where that stock is and where it could be based on if everyone took your philosophy.
Most people are. So I got to say, all the charter boat captains that are fishing down our way, even the out-of-state boats, everybody's being pretty good.
But do you see that transfer over to the recreational guys that have come out with you now, and now they have their own boat?
Yeah, a lot of recreational guys are doing it too. I'm seeing their post, and they're letting fish go. A lot of my clients have their own boats still. Yeah. Sometimes that time of year they take their boats out. But I'm seeing a lot of guys, because of social media, nobody wants to be the one killing a big fish on social media. They're going to get called out for it. But as far, like I said, I'm kind of in one of those boats where some of the younger charter boat captains, I've actually spoke to a couple. I'm like, you don't remember when it was gone. So, I had to talk with a couple guys. I'm like, you got to be a little bit better. You don't have to be. The laws state that, but try to, you talk your customers into letting a big fish go. You just know there's some guys you don't even tie. I don't even try. I know that fish is going home with him for dinner because that's what he wants. He wants a big. And there's other guys. I'm like, hey, that's kind of a nice one to let go. It's, it's an 8-9 pounder. It's going to be a double digit in a couple years. And all you got to do is tell them that, and they release them. But I had these 2 guys when I first started charter fishing about 15 years ago. There's a friend of mine called Coast Guard Joe. And he was in the Coast Guard, and his father and his cousin were from New Jersey. And they would come up. Those are the first 2 really good black fishermen that I've ever taken out on charters. And these guys would come up to see their son at the Coast Guard.
We went out before those guys.
Yeah. And they would talk to me about Maryland and that kind of stuff. And I thought to myself, I'm like, geez, we're never going to have that kind of fishery up here unless we really let some big fish go. And I commercial blackfish years ago. And I never got, my biggest is 13 pounds. And way back in the day, if you caught a 10-pounder, 1 10-pounder throughout the course of the whole year, and I fished a lot because I was commercial fishing, and they just weren't there. They were still growing. Now a 10-pounder and not, it is almost an everyday fish. And if it's not 10, it's a 9.5. Or a 9 pound. So, which is just, you can just, even on a bad day, somebody usually gets a nice fish. So we have something super special in Rhode Island. I think, I want to talk to some people about making it a fishery that, almost a trophy fishery where people aren't coming from New York and New Jersey. My customers are all from New York, New Jersey. They're not coming to Rhode Island because the fishing stinks. But you know what I mean? And our worst day of fishing is better than what they were going to do down there on some of those trips that time of year. So we have something super special. I don't think we can wreck it because what I'm told is the fish start spawning at 14 inches. All right, 12. They start spawning at 12. 12 to 16 is quite a few years. they're smaller fish. I don't think those eggs are as good as probably a bigger fish. So, but it's in the right step. I think what we really got to do to protect the fishery, Massachusetts, Connecticut, I think Massachusetts and Connecticut can benefit huge from this too. Go up 1 inch or to 2 inches, 17, 18-inch fish. And I think the water in a couple years' time would be paved. And that would give, there's such slow going. You got to think 17-inch fish is probably would spawn probably maybe 8 years. Yeah, and I'm not a biologist, so I don't know. But, and the other thing about letting the females go, I've asked biologists, are we screwing up by letting too many females go and not, and having that many males? Yeah. So I don't really have the answer for that one yet. So that's something we got to keep in mind, that making sure we don't have an abundance of females. And not males but I think it's good. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I have to think that you've seen this Rhode Island state record was just broken a couple years ago. And, every year you're hearing about 19, 20 pounders, whereas just 10 years ago, that didn't happen. You didn't hear about 20-pound fish in New England, and now you're starting to hear more and more about it.
I found this spot at the end of the year, and it was something I had weather. Wind was coming. I had to hide behind these rocks. And I found this spot for like a 2-week period, and the fish were just gigantic. And we're breaking them off. We're breaking them off. I probably went through a 2 weeks period of time. I probably broke off 12 fish that I wanted to see. When Garrett caught that nice fish with me this year, that was like the last day I fished that spot, and Garrett got that fish. I was like, thank God, because I knew these fish were all monsters. We had a fish.
Was that based on gear? Was that based on just the structure that's down there, that these fish were going in there, or just the pure size of them?
It's pure size. It's gear. Yeah. Locking down drags. Yeah. For some reason, guys want to lock down the drags on the spinning reels. The fish has to take, it depends. If you're fishing a shipwreck or something, where I'd rather trust a terminal tackle. But I really think that all my guys, I get probably a couple text messages. Happy New Year, Cap. Next year I'm bringing bigger gear. Happy New Year's, Cap. Next year I'm bringing bigger gear. So they all, so we all kind of went lighter over the last couple of years to have a little bit more fun. But as we're going lighter, the fish are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we lost a fish a day or two before Garrett got his big fish. And the fight of this fish, up, down, swam out, up, down. And I thought maybe it was a big striper at one point, but then it came back and did the up, down thing. And then it just broke us off right above the hook. And some of it's anglers. Yeah. I mean, you mess up.
You get a 17, 18, 19-pound blackfish on there. It's anyone's guess as to whether or not you're going to get that fish out.
Yeah, it could be luck sometimes too. But a very good angler can. I mean, watching Garrett fight the fish he caught this year was. He's an unbelievable fisherman. So.
And that was an 18-pounder, right?
Just shy of 18. Yeah, yeah.
And the biggest one on your boat is 19.
Yeah, 19.
That was the one. Charlie Swords. He didn't catch it, but he was on the boat.
Yeah, Larry really got it. Yep.
I do have some other, since we're talking about Tog, I've got some kind of Tog tip type questions. Okay. I'm still looking for a 10-pound Tog. Yep. I've never caught one. I'm on a boat. I'm on your boat. What's going to help me, let's say, get an edge? I think of Tog as very competitive fishing because there's only a few fish down there. They're in one place, and I'm competing with Chris. I'm competing with you.
Yeah.
What's going to help give me an edge to get that 10-pounder?
Exactly why I don't fish anymore on my boat. I've done it too many times. I pulled the biggest fish of the day out, not just by luck. And I always felt somebody else in the boat would have caught that fish if I didn't put the rod down. So I'd try not to fish anymore unless they twist my arm. Yeah. Then I'll do
Jimmy
it.
Doesn't have that problem.
Yeah, no.
I would catch everyone
on my boat.
Yeah, no,
when
absolutely.
I fish on mine, I'm like, Jimmy, let's go ahead and set the Minn Kota trolling motor. Let's set up in here. I'm like, what, Jimmy? He's already got a line in the water set up.
Back to the helm, Chris.
So if you watch the really good fishermen on my boat, you will see what a lot of guys do, especially everybody wants to do the jig bite thing. Like Garrett's fish came off a jig. That's the biggest fish I've seen on a jig so far. Not everybody can set on the right bite. So I see people swinging a lot with jigs. And they're swinging on short bites or little bites instead of waiting for that right bite. And if you watch the really good black fishermen I've taken out over the bunch of years, they wait for the right bite. There's a guy, Victor, from Fisherman's Depot. Victor'd be sleeping, and boom, and he'd have a half of white crab on there, big bait, and he'd be just just like this, and then boom, he'd set the hook. And
How
then,
is he not getting picked? How is he not getting his
He'll
pocket picked?
he'll get picked, but they just know the right bite, And if they get picked, then they come up and they.
That's when the weight's being picked up and swam away.
Yeah. Sometimes the bite is too good. Like I think I mentioned that one of the days we went out. It was a west wind. Sometimes he just chews they're just chewing so much that it gets frustrating after a while. But you really let that jig. Sometimes you just lift up and that big one's just on it, especially on the jig, or the jig starts to swim away. That's when you know. But setting on small bites every time is just not a way to get it done.
So so for instance, if I'm feeling all these bites, I'm swinging more often, I'm reducing my chances of giving that big one a shot to come and muscle the other ones out of the way.
I think so.
Okay.
And along that same line, do you find that, like when you first get there, smaller fish, and as you kind of build a little bit of slick down there, and you get a little bit more stink in the water, that the bigger fish are hanging on the outside, they didn't get to be big fish because they're dumb.
Right.
And they just kind of start moving in, as Jimmy pointed out. Do you find that those bigger fish usually come later in the bite? Or later in that?
Absolutely. You can sometimes get one. Very rarely. It happened once this year. The pool fish was the first.
Drop down.
Yeah, and that happened once out of...
Yeah.
I don't even know if I ever remember that, actually. But it did happen this year for once. But
So along the lines of what Chris just said, how long will you give a spot before you move? How do you know when it's time to move or not?
depends on the bottom.
Okay.
So if I have endless bottom of boulders, I'll give that spot a lot longer because you're pulling fish in. Now, if it's somewhere like a shipwreck, what's on it is what's on it. It's more tide. What part of the tide they like to be on the shipwreck, which I don't like a lot of running water around on the shipwrecks.
Okay.
I like fishing that slack hour before, hour after. Once it starts going too much, but regular,
Now, is that because you're afraid of hanging up, or you think the fish just moved off?
No, they hang up, but it just seems like the smaller fish will hit and the big fish. Now, it might be different down New Jersey or whatever, but around here, we got a lot of water that comes in and out of the bay, and it can really sweep you. So you'll just see the bites will just get smaller and smaller. Matter of fact, the day when I was with Larry and Charlie Swords, we got that big fish. We got to that spot and I got there late. I got there and it was boom, 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 breaking up, boom, boom, boom. And then after Larry caught that fish, I think it was maybe 10 minutes after, we couldn't get another hit in that spot. So we just hit it.
Yeah.
We had
Very
we
tailored.
broke off, I think, 4 or 5 fish that day.
Wow.
But
Going back to jigs real quick, I talked with you about this with you when we were out fishing. I think it was a couple years ago. Jig color, and one thing you turned me on to was glow in the dark jigs, which to me, I don't ever think of glow in the dark beyond ice fishing.
Right.
But you said you could have an advantage with the Tautog.
So that's a question I get asked a lot. My personal opinion, and it's just my personal opinion, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, probably color doesn't matter, I would think. And I just see those days where it does. And especially with like a glow, a yellow, just there are those days that I think it does matter.
So the bright color is more likely to be a difference changer than, say, like a natural white legger.
And that's a huge part of tog fishing is clarity of the water. That has a big, a lot of times people go out and, it wasn't good today. Well, it wasn't good because the water was dirty. And then I see a lot of people, geez, the bite was horrible today. I only got fish for an hour or two. And I was like, I'm like, it was a full moon. You got it. They hit better on away from the ripping tide, especially in certain spots. When there's a full moon around Newport, I get away from it. I try to get away from tide. So that's one thing I try to do, especially bass fishing too. Same thing. I want to get away from that running water. There's 100 and I don't know how much, 160, 170 feet of water outside of Castle Hill. That's all got to rip out. It's all got to go around Brenton Reef, and that's a lot of water on a tide, especially on a moon tide. So one thing I try to do is I try to get away from that. Just go to spots that go further down east where the tide is not ripping as much. Same with the bass, and I'll go back to some of those spots as the tide slows up.
So conditions being more important than the color then.
Yeah.
How about weights and sizes in like your go-to jigs? Like, where's a sweet spot for you on the weights?
It depends how deep we're fishing.
Assuming you're not fishing those ripping tides, right, where you would need a little bit more weight.
I mean, some days I'm out in 100 feet of water, we get away with 6 ounces. Yeah. And then some days I'm in 50 feet of water, we need 10 ounces, so it really is where you're at. And you got to keep an eye on you got to, in that ripping current too, your baits get washed out a lot faster. So it's another thing to keep in mind. So if you can try to get away from it and try to, there's certain spots I love to fish that I can't go to on a full moon. So conditions, ideally, I mean, that dictates for me what I'm doing that day. I got spots in the east, I got spots in the west. North and south are really hard to hide behind islands because of the bay comes up and down. But east and west, you can usually find hiding spots. So if it's going to blow 30 out of the east, I got spots I go. If it blows 30 out of the west, I got spots I can go. When it blows north and south, not a lot of places to hide. North, you can hide a little bit, but
South
is tough.
Rhode Island.
Yeah.
The training. So Garrett, I fished with him this past fall. The training wheel, he called it, was a kind of a hook he attached to the eye of his jig on a short leash, 4 or 5 inches. Do you see that used a lot? Do you recommend using that?
I got it banned from my boat.
Oh, okay.
No, it's not, but I'm trying to ban it.
Advised against.
It just, it's a nightmare. In the net, guys flip it, fish hooks off. Now you got 2 hooks flying around it. I tell everybody, it's Rhode Island. You don't need it until you need it. So I'm all for it if you need it. If the conditions are really tough. But I got guys that use it and they're very good at it. So I don't know.
By the same token, do you prefer one hook if you're fishing a rig over a jig? Do you like the one hook there, or are 2 hooks okay there?
I like one hook on a rig, unless I'm using a big bait and put 2 on either side. But I could just do a simple rig with 1 hook, and we're going through tons of bait nowadays compared to what we did years ago. So much scup and sea bass around that it just it's picking. So a lot of times you just put that other crab on. It just, as soon as you set the hook, it's gone.
When you say crabs, I know that like whenever I'm on a boat, certain people love certain different color crabs. What color crabs do you like of yours? One in particular, and then how you prepping that crab?
I am so old school with this. I reach in and grab a crab and I cut it in half, and I don't even cut the legs off.
So it doesn't have to be orange. It doesn't have to be white.
I tell everybody, I'm like, we're Rhode Island.
It's true though. I've been on the boats and I fall into this trap where you take your crab and you're like, I don't take this good care of my kids' meals.
I was going to say you go overboard as far as preparation.
He's from Jersey. Listen,
it's hard down there.
I'll explain it this way, and I explain it this way to a lot of people. I'm like, a guy on the starboard side of the boat catches a fish on a green crab, on a rig. Yeah. Okay, got it on a rig, green crab. Everybody puts on a rig and a green crab. Then one guy changes up, puts a jig on, puts an Asian crab on. Hey, I got one on a jig, an Asian crab. Everybody switches, goes in. And then one guy on this side of the boat goes back to a rig with a white crab. Hey, right here. Then there's 6 guys on this side of the boat. My boat's not big enough for 6 guys to be on. And they're all fishing right here with them. And I'm like, if all you guys just used what you started the day with, you spent more time. One guy would pick through the bucket just to get orange ones. Orange crabs.
I've done that.
Yeah. And
Jimmy's done that.
I thought the orange crabs were bad crabs. I always went for the green ones.
I always took the orange crabs. I loved them.
I've seen a big one caught on green, on orange, on white, on spiders. So it's, to me,
I think part of it is like when you feel like your confidence level is such that you're like, I dig through and I get an orange. Jimmy would always give me the orange. And I feel like for whatever reason, I would have the orange and I'm like locked in. But the reality of it is I'm probably fishing more intense. I'm waiting on that bite because I'm like, I got an orange. This is going to happen. And I'm just dialed in a little bit tighter.
When you're over your shoulder and you're moving the rig around and stuff, I imagine.
If I was fishing just for myself, I would pick through my crab pots and I'd find big greens like this. If I couldn't get whites, and I would fish those big greens and have just as much confidence in those.
So you're not tearing off all the legs. You're not cutting them in half.
I want a big bait. I want a big profile. I want, there's green crab. There's legs in my boat that I'll never get out of that boat. They'll be in there till the day that boat's done. Yeah, I mean.
I think I need to talk fishman. Before you sell it, I think you have to burn it to the water line because crab legs get everywhere. And
they're in the gunnels. There's crabs. You put the rod in, you hit crunch.
And somebody puts a crab pot over the electrical line of your boat and it saws right through it.
I'm nuts. Yeah, and it's an argument between Jimmy and Cheech. So we get a massive pile of crabs, put them in a crab net there, a crab pot hanging off my dock. Bring the regulator in. We're like, we're gonna hit it again, probably this weekend. These guys have what looks like some between razor wire and spider line. And I have, so I would do one loop around my dock from my power cord. These guys on top of the power cord, they do a monkey's paw on top of the thing. And with the weight and the ebb and flow of this thing, it just slices through the line. So I go down like a week later, it's like, power's dead. My tail is just swinging in the water. And to this day, you can't prove who did it, whether it was Jimmy or Cheech.
I'm pretty sure it was him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when Jimmy's gone, Cheech comes over and goes, I would never have done that. That's absolutely Jimmy. He's not a boat fisherman. You know? Yeah.
So are the white leggers? I know green crabs are relatively easy to get. See, have you always been using the white leggers? That seems like a relatively recent development in New England. I mean, no, in Jersey it's been forever.
And that's my one comment back. We never fished them years ago. There was one guy that would fish. I was in the Newport County Club, and this one guy, I wanted to beat him every year in the tournament. And what the heck was his name? I'll think of it. But he would fish Jonas, and he'd fish Jonas that's what you used. Guys fish Jonas, not whites, back in the day. Now they fish whites. And every year he would catch the biggest, tog in the tournament. And I finally fished a Jonah one year, and I beat him. And I didn't weigh the fishing for the club. It was late in the year, and I just let it go. But
so there is a difference, though. They can be advantageous. Is it more the size of them, just that they're bigger than the green crabs, or do you think there's more to it?
I think the whiteness sticks out down deep. I think they say they taste different. Who the heck knows with that? I mean, they're bigger baits. I like the bigger ones. Some guys like the little ones. I mean, so it's all preference. But it's I do like a big white crab the right time of the year. But
now, we've talked a ton about tautoging. If there's one fish you go out there and you want to fish for, whether it's for the dinner table, which you don't take a lot of fish that way, but if there's one fish you want to get out there, is it the tautog or what is it?
Tautog. I mean, it's a Rhode Island. I mean, a lot of people talk to me like, geez, I can't find tautog in the fish market. They don't have it. So you got to go catch it pretty much around here if you want to eat it. And a lot of people do like it. It's horrible. Like all these great fish that we want to protect and stuff are all great eating. I mean, tog is good eating.
Tog's great.
And you don't ever want to fault anybody for, taking their limit. You don't ever want to get mad at anybody. They took a female. Well, you know what? Fishing's bad. We've had days where, even we kept to the end, like, we only need 3 fish left. Let's make it 3 males, because the day is almost over. But I used to have trips like a couple years ago where I'd be like, the guys would be throwing all the females back, and then it's the end of the day, and that cap, we're 5 short. I'm like, we just do, and I'm like, so it makes my day longer by, throwing all those females back too. But like I said, I think the rules where they're at now, they start spawning at 12. You can't keep them to 16. I don't think we'll ever wreck our fishery, even though it's the most pressure I've ever seen on these fish in Newport. I don't think we'll ever wreck it, but I think there are a couple things we can do to make sure we'll never wreck it. And then whoever fishes it. You know what I mean? It's, and I think that with a lot of things right now. I mean, I really think it's the most tog I've ever seen. It's probably the most stripers I've ever seen. Now I am friends with a lot of surf guys. I know where they surf fish. I'm catching monster fish right. If they could cast 2 or 3 distances from where they're at, they're not far from them. They're just not. They're in that hanging in that 20.
Just made a lot of friends with the surf crowd right there, BJ.
Well, I mean,
it's true though. No,
but if they don't see what I'm seeing on my fish finder, and they're not seeing what I'm catching, but they're right. I'm a surf guy too. I fished all those surf spots. Those fish just not going into that 10, 12 foot of water all the time anymore. And whatever there's a shortage because they're there. They're stacked up on those humps and they're piled up. Maybe 7, 8 years ago, if I went to 10 spots off of Newport, I caught fish maybe on 2 or 3. Now, if I go to 10 spots, I catch fish. I see fish. No, maybe not catch. I see fish on all 10 of those spots, and I'll find them in 3 or 4 of the spots by accident that day, just traveling in deep water, just in the middle of nowhere. So, it's one of those things. It's
something you touched on as far as social media. I think the learning curve for young anglers now that are out there on a boat, had a boat 2 years, 3 years, I think the learning curve has been shortened so much because of social media, because that person that is new to sport, new to out there on the boat, they're going to see right away that folks like you are letting these fish going. And I think that the learning curve compared to when I started going back 30-something years ago, back then you'd catch that fish, you'd pound your chest, hold it up, bring it back to the dock, because there was no proof otherwise. Right? You didn't have a cell phone in your back pocket, and it was kind of like, but the more experience you get, the more you want to let these fish go, because the economic impact of these fish is so much greater for the anglers coming versus catching it and bringing it home and putting it on the dinner table that way. But I do see that the social media and all of that has really kind of shortened that learning curve.
I do love the slot limit for stripers. I wish it was 32 to 40 inch. I don't like that 28. I don't like killing that 28 inch, 29 inch fish. I would like to see that fish spawn a couple times, and they still get the fish on the back end spawning. But I'd like to see it that. But I think it's doing.
The age-old argument there is though that 38 inch fish is going to have a hell of a lot more eggs.
That is
than that 28.
Yeah.
So if somebody takes that 28,
and it's probably the same with the Tautog
or 29 for the dinner table. It's probably the fillets that they're going to take off of that is going to suffice for the family, versus that 38, 40-inch fish that's going to just give you so many more eggs. So, you can make arguments both ways, but just like you said, it's the same for the Tautog.
Yeah, I think they're definitely going to be healthier eggs on the bigger fish, but I think it's definitely working. I have to air a couple of these fish every now and then, and I don't know if there's enough talk about releasing them, keeping them healthy. Everybody says you hold them up by a boga, you're going to kill them. These fish are not made out of paper mache like people think. So when people get on somebody for holding them up like that, I'm like, we don't do it because of that, but you really can't get a weight on a fish if you don't hang it. But the one thing I see the most thing is them getting air in their stomach. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you pull up a scale, I have a little tiny thin knife. Pick up the scale, and I just turn it a little, poke it in, real light, turn it. All the air comes out, and that fish swims right away. Now, this year, I'm going to try to tag those fish that I have to release with it. And I did it with blackfish this year, too, and they took off. Those are the fish I would like to tag to find out. But I'm watching these fish. Do they go down below and die? I don't know. They seem like they swim well. Just seems like the air that's in their bellies is the problem.
That's become such a big issue in like the Gulf in the Southeast with red snapper, because at some point they factor the fishing mortality into the regulations, and for years the Recreational Fishing Alliance was all up in arms about the red snapper because their season kept getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Yeah. And so they have where they will have to vent these fish, where they take a special tool, put it into the swim bladder to release those gases so the fish can get back down. And you're right, people don't talk about that a lot with striped bass.
Yeah, and that's one thing. I don't see a lot off of Newport, these fish dying. We don't have the currents and stuff as they do it like Southwest Ledge. So Southwest Ledge, with that ripping tide, they even have to work harder to get down. So any year and then those fish aren't getting down. So it's one of those things where this just has to be talked about. Release tools have to be talked about a little bit more because we are letting these fish go so they make it. You know what I mean? The slot limit I like. The slot limit, I don't like that commercial guys. I'm a commercial guy too. I don't like the fact that they can still keep the massive fish. I want to see, like in Rhode Island, for example, and this is probably going to piss some guys off, but in Rhode Island, you're allowed 5 fish. Let's make it 10 fish and give them a slot fish just like everybody else. You got to protect the 30s, 40s, and whatever. And I don't think we really need to protect 50-inch fish or 55-inch fish because I don't know what.
So few of them.
Yeah.
But I would like to see. I would like to see a high number on the slot, so the record could be beat again someday. You know what I mean? So if you had a 50, let's make it. Well, how big was Meyerson's fish length?
81. So was it?
That's it right there behind you.
So make the slot right to there, like a little bit. Just so somebody has a chance.
Yeah.
You're fishing. Everybody's dream is to beat the world record. So, but having it now, actually, a commercial guy could do it, but a rec guy couldn't.
It sounds like you fish for everything that swims in Rhode Island at one point or another. But surf fishing, I know, was very near and dear to your heart. Years ago, you did a lot of chunking. We've talked about this in the ice shack. Last year on Moosehead.
So, a lot of my surf fishing cost me a lot of jobs because I was one of those guys. Robbie's nuts. I was Robbie before Robbie was Robbie. So, but nobody knew back then because I would stay out till 2, 3 in the morning, and I'd be like, one more cast, one more cast, one more fish. And that'd be like 4 to 5. That'd be me showing up to work an hour or two late. I had a job where I did forms, hard work. So I would show up to work late every day. And this guy would look at me, never say a word, knew I was out fishing, never say a word to me. I show up, and end of the day, everybody would go, and he'd look at me, go, come on, let's go. I'm like, where are we going? He goes, we're going to put a footing in for the. He actually, I think, loved the fact that I showed up late every day.
Because he get you for another hour
or two. For a couple hours after work and start a job for the next day. So I knew that, so I wouldn't get in trouble.
Yeah,
so
right.
I knew, but I could never say, well, I'm not working late. So the days we had softball games and stuff, I'd show up early. But I lost a lot of jobs because I was so obsessed with fishing. And my brother-in-law told me, he's like, you're not going to make it in this world unless you do something with fishing. And he was right. I screwed up more jobs because of fishing, just being so, everybody's addicted to something. And that was me back in the day. And especially surf fishing, I just loved it. I threw lures and stuff too. I fished Block Island with Dennis and Broder and all those guys. But I used to love waiting on the chunk and just wait for that big fish. But
that is, to me, I think like the most exciting seconds in surf fishing are when you're fishing a chunk and between feeling that first hit and when you set the hook.
Yeah.
You know, but just know at that point might be a 60-pounder when you just feel picked up.
Oh, especially when you're fishing a pokey head or something where you think it's a big bait and
That's all considered field research for Jimmy when he comes in late.
Yeah.
So I field research.
Oh, is that a sore subject that I shouldn't have gotten into that one?
I was creating content.
Creating
Yeah,
content.
yeah, excuse. I was just,
Yeah.
But
So surf fishing did cost you some jobs. At what point did you make the switch into making fishing your living? Were you always commercial fishing along those lines or along that time?
yeah, I had a license. I would sell a couple from the surf. Surf fish Block Island for a lot of years. We'd rent a house out there. Then one day I came over the summer. I bought a small boat, and it worked. It went exactly like this. I get in my boat. I have a clue what I'm doing. I go out to Warren's Point, Little Compton, get up as tight as I could to shore without scaring myself too much, and fish. Not catch anything. Take my boat, put it on the trailer, go home, put my waders, drive out to Warren's, catch fish. Next day, go back in my boat, do the same thing all over and again, couldn't catch a fish. Go back home, put my waders on, go back out to Warren's and catch fish. And it was that adage of the boat guy wants to cast to shore and the surf guy wants to cast out to the boat. But I mean, it was a fine line with the waves coming in, how close I would get. I didn't want to scare myself. I was new to boat fishing, and but it took me a long time to figure out the boat fishing. Getting back to like social media, I'm a little jealous. So when these new captains come up, and I know a lot of these captains, these new ones learned from watching your shows and watching that, where I had to do it the hard way. So I'm actually, it pisses me off that these kids get to watch your videos and these podcasts and learn. But now I'm in a band now. I'm playing the drums.
You've been in a band for a while, haven't you? On and off drummer?
Couple years, yeah, but I didn't play for 30 years. But my band's like, hey, we want to learn this new song. So I'm like, all right, Google. See this little girl from Japan whipping out Blondie, and I'm going. I almost wanted to throw my drums away after watching this girl play. But here I get so mad at the new fisherman, and here I am learning the drum stuff. If you have this at your,
that's what it is. That's
the
way of the world.
If you don't use it, you're stupid. I mean, but what a great time to learn how to fish right now with, I think, all these fish that are around. I think it's a great time to get into the sport.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and the saying that as a surf fisherman, I've said once or twice, boat fish don't count, but it is a completely different discipline.
Absolutely, yeah.
I would be if you handed me the keys to the boat and said, "Go find me some big striped bass."
Yeah.
If I knew where they were in the surf, I still couldn't do it in a boat. It's a completely different mindset, and you're looking for different stuff.
The technologies from now to years ago is so good now. I look at my fish finder, I go over a school of fish, and I'll look at it, and I'm like, all right, take a couple passes, they won't hit. I know, I'm so convinced, and I know the size of those fish by my fish finder. Just take those fish, and I'll leave them alone. Instead of running those fish over for an hour till they turn on and spooking them, because they will take off, just leave them alone and then come back to them. But having good electronics will let you know that I'm going to go back to those fish, and they might move on the tide or whatever, but most of the time they're sitting back there. And the other thing I see a lot in Newport is like, I'll come around, and I try to get a little bit later start now. These guys, you can't beat these guys to the spots on the weekend. So I let them go first, and I'll go behind them and pick up what they missed. Once they realize they can't catch the stripers, they usually go sea bassing, and they clear all the striper spots. So I'll go over to the striper spots and I'll come around the corner from Brent Reef and I'll look at a spot and I'm like, geez, there's no boats on it. That big school of fish must have moved. I get over to the pot of fish and I'm looking at my fish finder and they are so tight to the bottom, it looks like bottom. So everybody just drives right by it, and they don't have that much confidence in the electronics. So you have to see now. If you took that same screen on a 2D and you could see them stacked and they look like bottom, and you take it, and you go over to DI, you can actually see separation in those fish between the bottom.
Yeah, that's the down imaging, which is that the 3D sonar from Humminbird?
They just call it down imaging. Yeah. So yeah, but it's like 3D. It's
I find it like, Jimmy, to your point though, I find it like when I do get out surf casting and I've never been, that's not my go-to. I've always had a boat that way. But I do find when I go out surf casting, I find it much more peaceful. I find it much more, because generally you're by yourself. There's a lot less moving parts. And for the most part, when I go out surf fishing, you can kind of bring, a limited supply of this is what I'm going to fish, depending on what you're targeting and what you're doing that way. It just seems to me so many less moving parts. And when you reference going out on the boat, one of the things that I find going out on the boat is that it's just the responsibility is ratcheted up tenfold, right? From what you could go bump in the night out there.
I'm just laughing. Like you get down, somebody's cut your electric cord.
Somebody's cut your electric cord.
I got this close to being taken out in the fog this year, on spot lock, black fishing.
That's the
guy
stuff.
Came out of the fog, and he missed the front of my boat by this much. He turned the wheel.
Running no radar out there, just
he had radar. And you know what? He had radar, and then I had to think about this afterwards. I was fishing near the Newport Bridge. That bridge blocked his radar, so
he saw the bridge, but he didn't see you behind it.
I don't think he saw me behind it because
man.
But the other thing, and I didn't want to give the guy. I didn't want to call him out or do anything like that, but the safe speed wasn't there.
Yeah.
He was flying. And that was the only thing I get that the bridge, and that was a mistake. I realized after. I said, well, I guess I don't want to hang near that thing in the fog like that. So I'm 15 years in the chart and still learning, but that's one thing I'll never do in the fog is I was purposely trying to hide over on the side there, thinking I was far away from the channel enough. And that scared the daylights out of me.
When you're out surf fishing like that, and there's three of you, you're all kind of accountable to yourself. When you're on a boat as a captain, BJ, it's you. You're in charge.
Yeah, well, I do tell
gets
everybody.
Hurt out there.
I tell everybody all the time. I say, keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah,
it's just not me going down in this boat with all of us. So everybody. I said, if you see something, point it out because I don't see it. I'll tell you how good these fish finders are now. I'm locked on my Apex all the time. I'm constantly staring at the thing, and you got to pop up every now and then. You don't want to. So
speaking of electronics, when you're looking for a new spot, let's say we do it for blackfish and we can do it for stripers too. What are you looking for when you're scouting an area? What lets you know that maybe this might be a good tog spot? Say we come across it in June when you're striper fishing. Have you ever done that while you're striper fishing? Think this might be a good tog spot?
I'll mark them, and that's how Robbie and I have the advantage in Rhode Island. We're out there all summer long, and eventually our paths are going to take us over something we haven't seen before. But we did this show a couple years ago with the state trooper.
Mike Webster, sure.
Yeah, and I brought you guys over to that piece of bottom. Now, that piece of bottom, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if I thought there was fish in that kind of bottom, although we didn't have a good day that day there, that spot I've
You had fished. You brought us to a spot there that you said 3 years earlier you had not fished, and we had dialed
that
in. And we went in there and we caught fish on it. It was blowing like stink.
Yeah, but that bottom right there is just boulders, gravelly bottom and boulders spread out. So
not deep.
Not deep, and I'll catch them in there. I'll move shallow, I'll move deep, but those big fish are just hanging in those boulders. So it's something I was always looking for drop-offs before, piers, pylons.
No, I can't remember. Did we drift that day? Were we drifting because the boulder field we anchored up?
We spot locked. Yep.
Spot locked. Yep.
And then, but that spot we didn't have a great day that day, but. Now when I found that bottom there years ago and then realized there was fish on it, changed my way of thinking. Yeah. Now I go to that's why I just like that spot, you can build the bite. The longer you're there, I think the better it is. Sometimes you go there, it takes a while to build a bite there. A lot with blackfishing too is, especially off Newport, is time of year. I get a lot of guys that's like, I know they find one of my spots and then I see them for the next 3 days, they're just sitting in that spot. And there's the right time to fish these spots, and that's what people don't realize. They'll go to a spot where they fished maybe the year before, that same day, And it might be a week difference in the weather pattern. Like it might be the weather might be a little bit warmer this year, and the fish just haven't got to that spot yet. So the guys will be like, "Oh, that spot was horrible." It's like, no, you go there a week later, and that fish would. So a lot of these spots, knowing what time of year for what types of spots, but I will try to find those boulderies and the mussel beds, which you can't really see. Yeah. If you can find boulders and then you can find mussel beds, it's deadly. I mean, absolutely. I take a lot of pride in finding new spots, and I love it. I don't get that much excited about catching a fish anymore, but finding a new spot for some reason gets me.
Along the same lines, it's funny. You see through social media, cobia being caught here. Triggerfish seem to be a regular occurrence now. With the water warming up and everything kind of moving further north, do you find, since you started 15 years ago to today, that you'll find new spots based on the fact that the weather conditions and the water temperatures have changed over the last 15 years, that things may be, or do you still find kind of if you have A, B, C, and D, they're going to be there?
This is going to piss a lot of people off. But if this is global warming, I'm all for it. It's making fishing good. I mean, there's things that are, let's all get F-250s. And no, I'm joking. But
F-250s.
It is different, man. It's just, and you have to learn you have to relearn every year. Yeah. But the things that I'm seeing, it's just crazy. This year, so I'd never seen a hammerhead in Rhode Island waters. Seen 3 this year, 2 in one day. And close to Newport. Never. All the sharks I saw this year were like browner sharks. I always saw like makos, blue sharks, and what else? This year there's sandbars, there's duskies. They're all brown sharks that we were catching. And I have a couple spots really close to Newport that we do these light tackle shark trips. And I couldn't get the hammerheads to hit, but duskies, and it's cool. I mean, it's just everything's like you said, it's different.
I think a big part of it, I think they're doing a better job with the regulation of the bunker, though, too. The bait. I just think that the bait has been. I mean, when you have a whale 200 yards offshore landing on a boat, just off the coast of Plymouth, it's in there because the bait's in there.
It's cool. It's not my boat, but it was wild, wasn't it? Yeah. I couldn't, with the tuna being so close to shore this year, I couldn't believe the amount of big sharks that were in real tight with these. It's amazing. I think it's cool, but it's. You do have to relearn every year because you'll find stuff by accident, and then you got to go adapt with it.
Now you put was that the first giant tuna you've put on your boat this year?
Yeah, that was our first fish we hooked. That was the first day fishing.
1 for 1, man.
And I made my deckhand reel the whole thing in.
Do the whole thing? Smart. That's smart.
He said, "Cap, can you reel?" I said, "Nope. Whatever we're doing is working here. We have no clue what we're doing." Robbie talked me into this.
This is Robbie Taylor, for those guys who don't realize.
Robbie talked me.
We throw a lot of names out. We don't put a name to Garrett's last name. It's always Garrett, Robbie, and all that. Robbie Taylor.
So, and Garrett Ware. But Robbie, I think he wanted me to get in this so I could catch bait for him. So
that's absolutely Robbie. That's absolutely Robbie.
So he gives me his old rods, and we were kind of setting ourselves up for it. So Jackson and I go out there, but Jackson crimped we crimped. I'm 3.5 hours. I'm waiting for the crimp to break. I'm waiting for this. My stomach's in knots. I'm up, caught 3 lobster pots.
How big was this fish?
It was 111 inches.
And how'd you get it up over the side? Because you don't have a winch on that.
We had to drag it back to Newport and pull it up with the
111 inches?
Yeah.
And that was the first one?
First one, yeah.
That's something else, man.
I didn't think we were going to catch. I told Jackson, I was like, well, I'll be happy hooking up on a couple, even if we lose them. So then I started feeling bad for Jackson because about an hour and a half into the fight, he's swearing at the fish. He is just
111 inches.
Yeah, 3.5 hours.
So it was just the 2 of you guys on the boat?
Yeah, it was just the 2 of us. And I didn't know how much pressure I could put on it, so I followed him around a lot. Yeah. Probably didn't tire him. Now I know a little bit more now than I knew then. But the poor Jackson, he'd Cap, how deep's the fish? I'd be 40 feet. I'm watching. We're only fishing 105. That fish never came off at 80 feet for us.
Is Jackson still with us? Jackson didn't die out there, right?
No, Jackson loved it. He actually just got a tattoo with the fin when it says 111 inches under it.
Oh, it's awesome.
So I got to get the same one. So,
that's awesome.
But that could be one and done. I mean, as far as that's not my cup of tea. Yeah. Jackson wanted to do it. Robbie wanted us to do it. And I thought the fact that we got lucky and we actually
Those fish have moved in closer and closer and closer. It's crazy. I fished with you now 4 or 5 times on shoots, and I like getting into this stuff. Like, I've never been on your boat that you didn't have Dunkin Donuts on there. You didn't have donuts on the boat. It was almost like if we weren't fishing unless there were donuts on board, although you've lost a shit ton of weight.
So I could tell how many guys have watched your shows because they walk down the dock with a dozen donuts. and I feel bad now that I don't get to eat them, but they all come with the lucky donuts. So they all, because of the show.
Yeah.
One of the best was the clip where you guys tried to toss a box of donuts
I don't know
from one
why
boat
we
to
thought that was
another.
a good idea.
And it hit the water. It missed.
The
It was
wind caught it, I think.
I forget who was throwing to who.
I think
but-
BJ was throwing to me.
I think all guilty parties
it
involved.
I threw that one a little bit like Jones there.
But it hits the water, and the lid popped up like a sail. And it was that windy day you guys were talking about.
2 donuts
and it
inside
just
there,
sailed
so
off
it just
into the
started sailing
distance.
off.
Just a single donut in there in the box, and it just
I think
over
I
the
caught
horizon.
one donut in the net, and like there was just one donut in the net, and then there was a few of them just that landed face up, and it was like there was like a maple frosted just
Great
floating
donut
away.
debacle that was. Yeah.
But what other like
So you're playing a band? How? What's the name of the band?
So I didn't think this out. So this is a coronavirus kind of fun thing that turned into. I really never. I thought we'd play one gig and that would be it. Nobody would ask us back. So in the band called Moment's Notice, and we're gigging all the time now, and it's.
You having fun at it though?
Yeah, until you got to get up at 5 the next day to go blackfishing. So, but I didn't realize like this year really we gigged so much. We had a lot of big gigs.
How many in the band?
6 of us.
And the name of it again?
It's Moment's Notice.
And what are you guys playing mostly?
What kind of music?
Yeah.
Rolling
classic
Stones.
rock. So classic. A lot of classic. rock.
We play some new. We have a very good female singer. She's an opera singer at Rhode Island College. And she's 20 years old. She's playing with a bunch of old guys. We're a bunch of old guys with 2 20-year-olds in the band. And it's...
All right, I'm putting it out right now.
Yeah.
How have we not had you play at Striper Fest?
because we're just new. We just started. We're just now...
Opening act next year?
Yeah, or, I mean, we're good. We really come a long way. I mean, I've had people come up, like, they said, you are not the same band you were a couple years ago, so we've really been practicing a lot. I'm trying to lose weight so I could get some youth. And,
You look
and
good,
get some-
brother. You do.
Thank
You
you.
look good, man. You really do.
Trying to let myself go with the coronavirus and Yellowstone and Netflix. But the
Who wins a foot race between you and Robbie Taylor yet? You're not there yet. Robbie still has you?
oh yeah, I wouldn't even. Here's the thing: is I wouldn't even. I pulled my Achilles leaning into my truck trying to get something off the passenger seat instead of walking around and open the passenger door. So I know my limitations right now.
This is ice fishing.
Yeah.
This is ice fishing. There's always some shenanigans out there.
My thing is like I think I could do well, but it's not worth what I'm going to hurt to prove a point. So, it's,
But you've brought up Robbie a lot throughout this podcast. I mean, working together as charter captains with another guy that you can share information with and work together with. That's how important's that been?
he's the only
to
guy
Yeah.
I work with, and it's the part of the reason that we think a lot alike. We totally fish the same. If he's learned things from me, I learned things from him. It's just we especially when we do 2-boat charters. You can't be on a boat, half the boat does one thing and you send him with another guy that does something totally different. It's kind of nice that Robbie and I can do the same things, and we fish a lot. We can heel, we can tube, we can do whatever we need to do and do it, so it's, and fishing with him, he's cool. He's laid back. He's a lot of fun. If I have to give somebody a charter, I give it to him just because of the,
you know that he's going to do a quality job and he's going to be respectful.
listen, nobody wants to catch more than Robbie and I. Yeah. But there are days where we're going to have fun every day, no matter what the fishing is, whatever the conditions are. We like to have fun. So I can't predict what the fishing is going to be that day, but I can tell you this: we're going to laugh, But
You just went through some of your striper techniques earlier, and one that you said at the very beginning of this podcast was the Flutter spoon.
Yep.
And is this your first year bringing those up here, or have you been using those for a couple years?
been fishing it probably the longest out of anybody in the Northeast.
So the Flutter spoon it's a big. It originated for largemouth bass, but it's probably a 9-inch to 11-inch spoon, really wide bodied, and when it falls through the water, it just looks like a dying bait fish.
So what happened years ago, Bill Carson, when I first got on the pro staff with Humminbird, Bill Carson came up and fished with me. Now, Captain Max Lures down in Georgia, he sells these things. And Bill and him are really good friends, and Bill brought a bunch up. And he's like, these are for freshwater bass. And
I was going to say, he's fishing those for freshwater striped bass.
And I'm looking at these things and I'm laughing. I'm like, Bill, what are you doing with these things? And I call him Bucktail Bill. We always make fun of each other. And Bill's like, you should try these.
It's not easy to do if you know Bill Carson. Right?
So Bill's like, you got to fish this thing. So Bill takes off, and it was that year. I had this lady on the boat, and the fish were blitzing. It was in the fall, and she just wasn't very good at casting. And I said, BJ, think, what can I do? What can I do? I saw the spoon. So I take the spoon, I put it on, and she drops it just down. I just drop it down and just reel up. And every time I turned around, she had a fish on. I'm like, ooh, there's something to these things. So I thought maybe it would be good just for people that couldn't really fish. Then we started fishing these things in the bay and under these schools. Now, these things have to be on feeding fish for the most part. Very hard to pull a fish that are just laying on humps and just vertical jig them. They don't seem like they want it. Actively feeding, chasing bait, they'll smoke them. So I put the video out this year. I've been trying to keep them secret for a lot of years, and I kind of put the video out this year, and people went nuts. Nobody could get these flutter spoons. But I've been fishing them for a long time and never realized that it was going to take off like this. Like, it's just crazy. Now all the guys in New York, New Jersey are doing it. Around bunker schools, if you see that thing spin, you see that shine, it looks just like a bunker fluttering.
It's incredible. The action on it is so lifelike, and you can't see, like, do you miss a lot of fish on it?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's got a single treble hook at the tail.
I put it, yeah. You'll miss a lot of hooks just naturally, just the way they hit it. I think they hit a lot of hit on the outside, but on Lake Gear, a lot of fun.
So I caught my first fish on one this year. We were sea bass fishing, and the sea bassing was slow, but I brought one on board in case we found bass, and we hadn't seen any. I just dropped it down blind. I was like, let me see what this feels like.
Yeah.
And man, they pile on it. Like the
sea bass getting them too?
No.
Oh,
The striper. It was
okay.
a 30-pound striper came out of nowhere and ate this thing because just when I was trying to see how it fished.
Yeah.
They hit it so hard.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's another weapon to have when you can't find bunker that day, or you can't, for all the guys that don't have side scan, that can't find the bunker, so definitely another arsenal. You can actually cast it. You can swim it back. You can, I troll it on lead core sometimes in the bay.
So you kept that under wraps. I thought that was a new, brand new.
A lot of years, and the only one that can validate my story is Bill. Bill knows when. Matter of fact,
he doesn't know what he had for breakfast this morning.
Tyson called me. He's like, these guys think they've been fishing this a long time because that thing's been in your boat forever, and it's. Oh
wow.
Yeah, you can't give away everything, until it's.
You just did.
Yeah, I know.
Nice job, Jimmy.
Yeah, but it's
That's what I do.
My tackle shops, Sam's, Sam's, Crafty One, and Saltwater Edge. They couldn't get enough of them last year. It's
crazy how these things go in cycles, though. They kind of these rages that are just like all of a sudden it's like you see on social media that people are talking. You get people like you and people like BJ. They're like, "Hey, I tried it. It really worked well." All of a sudden it's a spike, and then like 2 years later they're on to the next thing. Isn't it crazy?
It's funny is the New York, New Jersey thing, really, because that's why Vespi, Greg, big shot of Risa now. He's such a good fisherman. Is he's always trying stuff, but he'll go out and fish epoxy jigs for tog. He won't even bring bait out. But that could be another podcast with him someday.
Right.
But you can go tog fishing without bait and slam them. So
you just have to be willing to try something different at the expense of possibly catching. That's the deal.
Which
that's
runs completely contrary to like New Englanders. It's like if you cross us once 30 years ago, we remember it.
Yeah.
And so we're creatures of habit in New England, and it's just the way it is. And I think sometimes, although I will say that social media, again, when you see success and you see somebody, you're more tempted to change things sometimes that way. But
I think if you go fish other places, you learn things. The live chumming,
Yeah,
Robbie,
bringing that up from Florida.
That was
Robbie and I were in Puerto Rico, and then when we started we were fishing the charter boat down there, the guy would black out the live well, and he just started throwing. That's how we got the tuna and everything right to the boat out in 900 feet of water. He's throwing live bait, and it brings the tuna right to you.
It's all in Nova Scotia and PEI with the bluefin tuna down there. I mean, it's just like next thing you know, they're on the herring, and they're just taking the herring and just tossing them, and then next thing you know, they're creating their own, feeding frenzy, if you will.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yep.
I know I've been on your boat. You have certain superstitions. You know, and we touched on the donut thing that, like, for the longest time. What are some of the superstitions that you have on your boat, or you've seen come on your boat? We did a whole show on superstitions.
We did. Oh yeah.
But what, BJ? If you have superstitions, what are they?
I really don't know.
Like if you fish in the area and you get up at a certain period of time and you go out there. Now, a lot of that's probably not a superstition. It's just based on how the tide and everything has been.
Yeah.
But
I don't.
I thought you would have had more than those based on the fact that we had to have donuts on the boat.
No, I'm one of those guys that. So the whole donut thing came from commercial fishing Block Island years ago for striper fishing. We hit this shop in the morning, and every time we did that, we had great fishing. So that's how the donut thing started.
Yeah.
But I'm one of those guys where you really
do your homework and you're not going to rely on anything.
No, just go fish.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't worry about the small things like bait and this and that. I've seen massive tog come off a little bait. I've seen them go off big baits. I've seen them go off whites, greens. I've seen it all. So I know you're not going to catch them if your bait's not in the water. So that's the main thing, is just fishing and making sure your terminal tackle is, especially for tog, make sure it's up to par. Make sure. Don't be lazy changing your leaders out, because it's gonna cost you. As soon as you say, I can get one more fish with that little nick, and that's when it hits. And I'm a very simple fisherman. As much as I do my homework, I constantly think of new ways to catch fish and new ways to do things. But getting to play with the new toys first too is a plus. You know. Everybody says, "Oh, the spot locks changed tog." I said, "Yeah, it did, but it's still Newport. You don't have to be you don't need a spot lock. Me, I do, because I'm out every day, but you can
it also just increases your bottom time, right?
Absolutely.
It just increases your bottom time. When you have to set an anchor, and then the next thing you know, you got to pull an anchor and move 6 feet. With the tog, that's it, 6 feet. That's right, and it can change everything that way. So I think a spot lock jog in this circumstance, one click, you've moved.
And it's no effort to go fish another spot. Yeah. You could just fly over to it. This looks nice. Let me go check it out. Give it a half an hour, nothing. You take off. It's with no effort. So that's the bottom.
You were how long? You were an early adopter of the spot lock. How long have you been using that?
Tyson from Humminbird we tried to put it on. Well, here's the story. I had one on my little boat. I had a little 18-footer. I brought Charlie Saws to a buoy to where we did the show. Yep. And I brought Charlie, and I was like, "Charlie, you're not going to believe this." And he's like, "Nah." So we go over and we start fishing.
This is Charlie Saws we're talking about. Yep.
We go fish the shipwreck, and about 10 minutes in, he goes, "Hey, BJ, we're not moving. I'm taking a land fix from this to the island. We're not moving." I'm like, "Charlie, we're not going to move." Boom, we start catching some nice fish. Half an hour later, Charlie still can't. He's not buying any of this. I'm like, "Charlie." Charlie's like, "BJ, we're not moving." I'm like, "I know, Charlie. We're sitting on this thing." And we ended up catching a couple nice fish. And finally, at the end of the day, Charlie's like, "BJ, we didn't move." I'm like, "I know, Charlie. That's fine." And Charlie's like, "I don't care what that thing costs. I'm buying one of those things."
That's so true.
But so what happened is, I could go to the spot and I could catch fish with the little boat with the spot lock. And I had a day the next day where the weather was horrible, couldn't get out front, and I needed to fish that spot. And I'm in my bigger boat. And I'm like, "Geez, I know the fish are right there, but I can't fish it." I had to go do something else. And Tyson was like, "You want to try putting one on a boat your size?" And we tried it. We kept it under wraps for a couple years, and then just to make sure it worked. And they got some cool stuff coming out. So
I see them exploding. I see them now. I see bay boats, more and more bay boats, and I see more and more of this.
There's not a boat in Newport that doesn't have one right now. It's
crazy.
It's absolutely nuts. And you know what? And it's a lot safer.
A lot of boat traffic down there. I mean,
it's a lot safer. Putting them in the kayaks now, it's a lot safer for the kayak guys. Anchoring in the kayak's dangerous. I watch a lot of the kayak guys drift, and they try to tog, and you'll get them, but it's they would be better off. It's hard. So, but
hey, my last question, and I'm sure Jimmy has a couple more. My last question is this, right? A lot of young anglers out there, a lot of young guys that came into the sport during the pandemic. We probably added 6-7 million anglers, and everyone and their mother went outside, BJ, right? Whether it was mountain biking, camping, hiking, whatever it was, everyone turned to the outside. Fishing saw that wave as well. For a lot of these new anglers, if you were talking to yourself 20 years ago, 25 years ago, what would you tell yourself? What would you tell these new anglers about being in this sport? And what is some of the advice you could give them so that they can meet with success and stay in this sport? And what would you tell yourself if you were talking to yourself 20 years ago, 25 years ago?
What I've learned, like the biggest part of fishing to me is weather. I am on a weather app all night trying to figure out the weather for the next day. And to do it without, it's tricky. It's tricky, and sometimes you got to pull 2 or 3 forecasts and they try to get it. But don't go die for a fish. All right, live to fish another day. And I see these guys that go out, and I'm like, and you can just tell they're new boaters, but they don't understand. All right, this is the forecast. It's going to blow 10 to 20 today out of the southwest. But we got a moon tide that's sweeping out, that's going out, and that's ebbing. And you can't teach that. I mean, that's stuff you have to learn on your own. And you just know that bay is going to be built right up. And, I have times where I was like, I'm not leaving. I'll fish an extra 2 hours just to wait for that to go down. But definitely, especially guys fishing block weather, if it kicks up on you while you're out there, then that's one thing. But going out and looking for it is not a good thing.
That's great advice. And along the same line, my first boat, 20-foot Shamrock, full keel, straight inboard. And I used to go out there and fish with Neil. And this is going back 30 years ago. And I don't know, as a young guy, you kind of throw caution to the wind. Electronics, none to speak of. You know, I had no radar on the thing. Yeah. And I had no radar. I had no fish finder. It was literally down the islands, bumping along rocks and stuff with a handheld radio that may or may not work and a compass that was off 30 degrees. And you look back on those days, and I learned because I didn't have a lot of those electronics. But I think the advice you just gave as far as looking at the weather, because I found myself in fog out there so thick you couldn't see the end of a 20-foot boat. It's just dangerous.
What happened to me this year is going to really, going forward, how I fish in fog is going to change, because there's a lot of days, it's tough when you're in a situation like guys book you a year in advance. They're so looking forward to that trip, and you got to tell them because of weather we can't go. They get upset, and sometimes they question you, and I'm like, and then sometimes you don't go, you cancel the trip, and it wasn't that bad. And then some other captain went that day, and then you get they went and they did all right, and I'm like, that's the chance. Sometimes the weather's better than you once predicted.
But to the point you just made, at least you're living to fish another day, right? There's always tomorrow if you're smart.
So that's the new thing about fishing. There's a lot of podcasts, there's fishing shows, there's YouTube, everything to teach you how to fish. But the one thing guys have to get up on with the new boating and stuff, because there are a ton of new boats out there, is learning the weather part of it, and
that kind of intuition comes from experience and time on the water.
There's things. I've been lucky. I've taken rides from Block Island. I probably shouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys right now, and I've learned from it, but I won't do it again.
And you would think that with today's resources, you're probably more prepared than ever before to kind of do that homework before you get off the dock. Guys, great advice from BJ Sylvia, Flipping Out Charters. Before you ever set foot on that boat and push off from the dock, do your homework. And here's the other thing is, because we never did this, BJ, and I'm sure you never did it, leave a float plan.
Yeah.
Where are you going? What are you doing? Right. It just makes that life so much easier as far as tracking that person down if they're on the boat. Where are you heading? What are you going to be fishing? What time you expect to be back? All of those kind of things. But I've just seen so many new anglers over the last 2 years coming into this sport. And if they're not meeting with success, they're leaving and moving on to something else. And if they stay with us, we have that many more advocates when it comes to just the fishery and access and everything that goes along with it. But Jimmy, I don't know if you had any more questions.
I got two more. First one is, where can people find you if they want to book you for a trip in 2025 for Tog?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, and we got a website. And
FlippingOutCharters.com?
Yeah, Flipping Out Charters, yep.
And at Flipping Out Charters on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Yep.
And my last question is, what song are you going to open up Striper Fest 2023 with?
I want to know that. What's the song that opens it up?
What do you want us to open with?
It's usually like the
I can't think of something funny fast enough. I'm moving too slow.
One thing I'd like to say is that I spent a lot of time in my younger years having to catch. Had to catch. It made it almost not fun because I was so obsessed with it. Now I realized, looking back, that now I'm not the younger guy, that older guys that I fish with can't fish anymore. They can't fish. They're older, and Now I realize it wasn't about that.
Yeah.
I realized it a little probably too late. It's more about the memories. For some reason, your wife will ask you something about, did you take the trash out last week? Or like the other day, and you're like, oh, I forgot. But you can remember every fishing thing you did with your buddies and on every special trip and this and that. So to the guys, like I was just way too into it. I had to catch. Now I have to catch for a different reason. I have to put you on fish, but it's when I fish for myself, I don't care. I found myself on the lake just looking at the sunsets and, just enjoying it more than being obsessed with.
And I think that speaks volumes to who you are, BJ. But I will say, the older I got, the more experienced I was a fisherman, the more you relish those experiences,
Right.
like you said. And you hit the nail on the head,
Yeah.
And I think that comes with age, though. I really do.
Yeah, I do.
And success.
I see a lot of my customers that come from New York. They're just happy stepping on that boat in the morning. You know what I mean? And one thing about blackfishing, if this guy crushed it that day, the next day you guarantee it's going to be somebody else. It's just the bite will change just a little bit, and it's funny how it's never. I've got guys that fish 4 or 5 days with me in a row, and it was never the same guy. It's always a different person on that has a really good trip. So it just goes to show how challenging blackfishing is, and so.
The world needs more captains like BJ Silvia. I fish with him. He's a very humble guy, great captain, and just the camaraderie out on your boat has always been so much fun.